Good afternoon, friends. I welcome you all to the 8th online lecture of Justice D.V. Sehgal Memorial Lecture Series. This lecture series has been possible due to the unconditional support of Shri Baldevraj Mahajanji, Advocate General Haryana and Senior Advocate, as well as Shri Padam Kant Dwivedi ji, Zonal Secretary. We all understand that 2020 has been a tough year for most of us due to COVID-19 pandemic. But during this unexpected time, one thing which has stood out and supported everybody in their lives is technology. It is with the prevalence of this technical support only that Adhivakta Parishad Punjab team has been able to provide a series of knowledgeable lectures with the benign presence of all our keynote speakers. We have had the benefit of hearing not only the practicing advocates, professors, but also the honorable judges on various topics such as Hindu laws, rent laws, NDPS Act, right to education, service matters, or GST, or like our last lecture on legal profession. Friends, our keynote speaker for the today session is Honorable Mr. Justice Harnaresh Singh Gilji. To introduce our today's keynote speaker, I would like to inform that His Lordship was born in Patiala. His father retired from the post of Cane Commissioner Punjab. His Lordships graduated from Government College of Boys, Chandigarh, and after completing his graduation in law, His Lordships was enrolled as an advocate of Punjab and Haryana High Court and started his legal practice. In the year 1988, he started practicing in Punjab and Haryana High Court at Chandigarh, and apart from other institutions, he remained legal advisor for Punjab Agricultural University, Ludhiana, and Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Science University, Ludhiana, since 2005 and 2008, respectively. His lordship practiced in civil and criminal matters, and also contested important writ matters before the Honorable High Court. After having put in 32 years of practice as an advocate, His Lordship was finally elevated as an additional judge of Punjab and Haryana High Court, Chandigarh, on 3rd of December 2018. Today, we all thank Lordships for accepting our invite for a virtual session in the ongoing lecture series. Now, I request Honorable Mr. Justice Harnaresh Singh Gilji to speak on the topic of a talk on writ jurisdiction. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Honorable Mr. Justice Sovig Sehgal sir, Judge Punjab and Haryana High Court, learned Mr. Baldev Raji Mahajan, Advocate General Punjab, Mr. Rakesh Gupta, President, Mr. Akhilesh Vyas, General Secretary of Adhivakta Parishad Punjab team, and all the members of the legal fraternity. Though this is a discussion, not any type of guidance or on my behalf, but it is indeed a very proud moment and privilege to that I feel honored to be one of the speakers in the Justice D.V. Sehgal Memorial Lecture Series. I have been told it's the 8th series, and it's a great opportunity which we are all availing during the area of this pandemic COVID-19. This is a new norm which has been adopted, and it is really a change through which we can interact with each other. I will now like to discuss with you the Article 32 and 226, by which the ample powers have been given by the Constitution of India to the Honorable Apex Court as well as to the High Court of this country. First of all, our Constitution is a collective provision based on a Constitution collected from the various part of the world. The founder members, led by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, have drafted the final report, which was carved into the sacred Constitution of India, which took 2 years, 11 months, and 17 days. The actual preamble of this Constitution is the justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Baba Sahib have stated, which I quote, that what we are having this liberty for We are having this liberty in order to reform our social system, which is full of inequality, discrimination, and other things which conflict in our fundamental rights. This constitution is a sacred and supreme document, and the Honorable Apex Court is the guardian and interpreter of the provisions of this constitution. This writ jurisdiction, if I can say, they started in the area of 12th or 13th century. At that stage, the suits were being filed, tailor-made suits were being filed, which consumed a lot of time. And it was at that stage the Royal Justice Courts of England adopted this document, and the preamblum of it originated at that stage. So since 12th century, this writ jurisdiction has been adopted, and on the basis of this writ petition, the aggrieved person whose fundamental rights are being infringed, they get prompt justice. Like on the Honorable Supreme Court, the writs based on habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, and quo warranto are entertained. The Article 32 of the Constitution, as Baba Sahib said, is the heart and soul of our Constitution. So the litigants who approach the Honorable Supreme Court and under Article 32 are being addressed there and then. The Article 139, which empowers the Supreme Court to enlarge the jurisdiction, because the jurisdiction under Article 32 is qua the fundamental rights, whereas the jurisdiction under Article 226 is fundamental rights and the other legal remedies. So one section, Article 139, is there giving in power to the Parliament to enact, give further powers to the Supreme Court, enhancing their jurisdiction beyond fundamental rights. But that has never been exercised by the Parliament of India. In my opinion, it may be that they are contended that the High Courts of India are exercising their powers under 226, which are addressing the requirement of the litigants. As far as Article 226 of Constitution of India is concerned, that also stand at par like writ petitions, habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, and quo warranto. We all are well aware that under Article 226, this clause 2 and 3, I think it will be very important to point it out here that subclause 2, by which the courts can pass an ex parte order against particular respondent. And under subclause 3, if that respondent against whom the ex parte order has been passed files an application, places on record of that court, and if that application is not addressed within 2 weeks, the ex parte order is automatically vacated. So the redressals of the litigants under Article 226, Article 32 is a very important issue as far as our Constitution is concerned. And then if we talk about the habeas corpus, which means listen, a court of command, it is generally said that as per habeas corpus, you may have a body. So it is like when we receive any communication, the Secretariat of the Honorable Chief Justice receive any communication through VC, through fax, or through ordinary post. So those applications are being entertained and taken up like as an habeas corpus, and where the one any of the detainees in being illegally detained, so the statement is asked to be recorded. He is to be immediately relieved if he is been illegally detained by that authority, which have no law to detain. There's a classic example that in year 2009, October 2019, the Karnataka High Court entertained a writ petition preferred by the parents of the girl. She was a Hindu girl, was married to a Muslim boy, but the issue was that she was illegally detained in a madrasa. So at that juncture, the Honorable Karnataka High Court interfered and it was addressed. So similarly is the case, one of the important I would like to address, one of the important case of Rajan, a victim student in 1976 when this country was, the emergency was imposed. So he was tortured by the police. By way of habeas, the courts intervened and that student Rajan in 1976. So meaning thereby, it is a very important subject article which have been introduced by forefathers of our constitution. And similarly is like the writ of mandamus. I will like to point out it is a command given to the courts. The courts give a command under Article 226. So it's also have a silent features like it issues command to the statutory authorities, the state authorities who are not performing their duties as per law. So the Honorable Supreme Court, while monitoring the working of the government officials, sometimes have an continuing mandamus, meaning thereby the working, once the mandamus is issued, it is being monitored so that the things could come to an logical end. So, similarly, if some state subjects, they enact some statute or bylaws or any type of rules, if those rules are against the constitution, against the fundamental rights, which are unreasonableness, and is there's some procedural lack, so they are also being declared ultra virus by the courts by way of this exercising this extraordinary jurisdiction. Similarly, I would like to point out here that if we go through the IPC, section 303 of IPC, in 1983, it was declared unconstitutional by the Honorable. So these are the salient features by which the courts monitor the wrongdoings or the unfundamental acts of the individuals or the government, and the intervention of the court is in the recent judgments of where the National Judicial Appointment Commission was declared unconstitutional is other example of the intervention of the Honorable Apex Court. But I will like to mention here that the United Nations, the quo warranto is exercised by way of filing the civil suits. The respondents are issued notice by the plaintiff, and it may take time, but in that country, this quo warranto is a civil suit, which in our country, it is being exercised by way of we can say Article 32 by the Honorable Apex Court, or Article 2 to 6 by the High Courts in India. So then comes prohibition. Prevention is the better than cure. That is the prohibition where the subordinate courts, the tribunals are prohibited who go beyond their jurisdiction. So it was in the initial stage in the case of East India Commercial Company versus Collector of Customs, where the directions were issued by the High Court in the writ of prohibition. So the writ of prohibition is very, very important part of the writ jurisdiction, which are generally being exercised by the under Article 2 to 6 to 6, as well as Article 32 by the Apex Court, as well as by the High Courts in India. So then the other I would like to say about certiorari. So it is a Latin word. It is at that stage it was called a royal demand for information. That is the clarity from the state subjects. So in this also there's a certiorari for quashing the unwanted jurisdiction orders passed by the subordinate courts, by the tribunals, or any other authority. So the vast powers have been given to the courts under these articles. So the error or the violation of natural principles of justice is also one of the important subjects which has been taken into consideration. And following the thought of Baba Sahib and the team who have constituted this sole and sacred subject, which has been guided and monitored by the Honorable Apex Court. One of the recent judgments, the Honorable Supreme Court in the Article 32, in the case of Arnab Manoranjan Goswami versus State of Maharashtra, have categorically stated that under Article 2 to 6, the High Courts of India, they must protect the right of a victim. Even though the Bombay High Court at that juncture directed the petitioner, that is Mr. Goswami, to approach the court of Sessions Court, but the Honorable Court, Supreme Court, have taken a stand specifically that when the rights of the victim are to be protected, you should not prohibit yourself by not availing the rule of Article 2 to 6 or Article 32, because it has been specifically stated by the Apex Court that the victim who is being now victimized by using that procedure, that is to be taken into consideration. So thereafter, the other field which have been opened by the father and the torch bearer of Honorable Chief Justice of India, Justice B.N. Bhagwati, that is the subject related to public interest litigation. My Lord speaks, I quote, "Life means not only the physical existence, it means use of every limb or faculty through the life is enjoyed. The right to life includes the right to healthy environment." So this was that juncture when my lordship visited the states like Bihar and Odisha at one time, and could see the litigants who approached my lordship at that juncture. And it was at that situation my lord have introduced this procedure of public interest litigation. Special department was enacted in the Honorable Supreme Court, a specific branch to entertain the applications written by the NGOs and other authorities, highlighting the grievance of the litigants who can't approach the courts, who don't have that money to pay to the lawyers. And this factor of public interest litigation was introduced. No doubt, there was some frivolous applications, petitions also filed, but keeping in view the necessity of the day, the public interest litigation and thereafter the National Legal Service Authority was enacted based upon the fundamental rights of the unprivileged, downtrodden citizen of India. Now, these legal service authorities are addressing the problems of the litigants in a large extent. And it can also be called the justice as a doorstep. Recently, we have also seen that through VCs, the applications, the documents are being sent in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the Union Territories now. The documents are by way of a plane being sent to the courts through email, which are being introduced, and the order, maybe a status quo order, maybe a stay order, are being sent to the aggrieved person through VC in the post office concerned, and are being handed over to that concerned, we can say, plaintiff, the litigant, and meaning thereby they are getting the relief in those areas where it is nowadays it is not possible to reach there because of snowfall. And sometimes the landlords or the financiers, they try to take advantage of that situation, and the court have gone to that extent also. So meaning thereby the high courts, the Honorable Supreme Court, they under Article 32, Article 226 are reaching to the litigants because the litigants with long pockets can approach the court very conveniently. But this public interest litigations and thereafter the National Legal Service authorities, they have really done a remarkable job in reaching litigants at that part of the country where it is, we can say, near impossible. So then there comes a question, right, regarding the overreaching of the courts in the administrative workings. I will say no. Wherever the courts find that the particular department, the particular administration, which they have been doing the work in the normal course, which has not been done, then at that stage, the intervention of the judiciary under Article 226, or we can say Article 32, is necessary. And it cannot be said it is the judicial overreaching, because by this, the litigants are given a prompt justice. Where the administration, the government is lacking, then the courts are bound to intervene, and it cannot be designated as an overreaching as far as the courts are concerned. So, but there is another field also, we can say there is a limitation also in filing the writ petition. We can't say that a litigant can wake up from his slumbers and he can say that, yes, I approach this court, because in the cases like the Honorable Supreme Court has fixed in their judicial verdicts the limitation regarding 3 years, and it is after 3 years it is to be scrutinized that it should not be, as far as the delay and latches are concerned, it should not be in a res judicator. This is also one of the important issues which is to be seen by the courts, and we generally see, because one person coming, waking from slumbers and approaching the court that yes, because this issue was addressed by the Honorable Apex Court uh, in the case of one Mr. Gupta. So, so it has been now specifically stated that after 3 years, it will not be entertained as a routine matter. So writ jurisdiction under Article 226, 227 has gone beyond, but there are some fields we can discuss on this also, that where there are so many documents to be taken into consideration, where the courts feel that this is a document which is to be seen through by the court by way of evidence, then the only provisions lie with the litigant is to file a civil suit. Though at that stage, the writ petition is not the remedy, because the document are to be scrutinized, the document are to be authenticated, exhibited, and thereafter it can be resolved. Otherwise, in the writ petitions, the document which suppose the government have issued, and that while appearing as respondent, the government comes to the conclusion, yes, we have issued the document. So that is an admission fact. But as far as the documents which are disputed, that cannot be taken into the writ jurisdiction, meaning thereby the suits are mandatory. And that's why our courts are entertaining the suits where the documents are to be scrutinized by the courts. So I will further like to say that the procedure adopted by the courts, humbly the jurisdiction part is also to be taken into consideration. But again, the Supreme Court in one of the highlighted judgments says that once some part of act is performed in the jurisdiction of one court and the other part is performed, then later on, say, some act has been done in state of Haryana, and thereafter the person shifts to the neighboring state, namely, as maybe we may say, Uttar Pradesh or Uttarakhand. So then the jurisdiction will extend to that state. There can be no prohibition for the particular court that yes, the jurisdiction ends in the state of Haryana in that particular case. So the writ jurisdictions are never used against the private person. It is only the government organization, the organization where the government have stakes, the courts issues the notices issues to those organizations where the government have their important aspect in that. So I will like to further state that I think time, what about time? Because there was a restriction of time in addressing the arguments, Mr. Sehgal. My brother Sehgal is here. So I will like to conclude my address here. I will thank you all the participants of the webinar for hearing me patiently. And I express my gratitude to Akhil Bharatiya Vidyak Parishad Punjab team and I hope that the rich legacy will continue flourishing as for the principle of justice, equity, fair play, and good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Because I'm sorry.
Mahajan sir, the learned Advocate General Punjab, and other Haryana, sorry, I beg to say, General Haryana, and my lawyer friends. Thank you.
Thank you, my lord. I wish to take some questions asked by our viewers with your kind permission, sir.
Yes, yes.
May I? Sir, Mr. Sahaj Sandhu wants to ask that kindly tell whether writ petition lie when lower court illegally appreciate documents or fail to appreciate documents.
No, that that order is to be challenged with before the district judge. And if there is no, it lies. The only thing is, if it is an interlocutory order, then you can approach the High Court in civil region, as we all know. And on this subject, Mr. Mahajan will guide us better than anybody else, because he's been a master of civil cases and civil jurisdiction. And I have learned a lot from Mr. Mahajan, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next question is asked by Mr. Rajiv Agrawal. He wants to ask that is writ before High Court is maintainable against judgment passed by NCDRC,
National
National Commission for Dispute, National Commission for
No, it is not. It is not. The apex court can entertain National Commission, thereafter apex court.
National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission.
Yes, National Dispute Redressal Commission at New Delhi. That is an appropriate authority where the litigant can approach thereafter.
So next question is from Mr. Professor Dr. Mohan R. Bola.
Yes.
He wants to ask that on 2nd of December
Yes.
2020, the Apex Court directed the government to set up human rights courts in view of Section 30 of Human Rights Act 1993.
That's right.
What is your lordship's opinion on such human rights courts with writ power?
Well, I like to hear the question again, please.
Sir, he wants to ask that on 2nd of December 2020, the
Yes.
Apex Court directed the government to set up human rights courts in view of Section 30 of Human Rights Act 1993.
That's right.
What is your lordship's opinion on such human rights courts with writ powers?
With the writ power.
Yes, sir.
The Human Rights Commission is a statutory body which is giving a redressal to the litigants, but since the order has been passed and it is a prejudice, I will not like to comment on this. Probably Mr. Mahajan will bear with me. So I'm sorry, I can't. I will not able to answer this question.
It's a judicial order. Everybody is expected to abide by it.
Yes, we have to honor that order, as far as I am concerned.
Thanks, my lord. Next question is from Mr. Pankaj Batra.
Yes.
In what matters one can bypass lower court jurisdiction and directly invoke writ jurisdiction?
Yes, and where the illegal act is conducted by the government authorities, the boards and corporations which have the sanctity of government. So those orders which are of which the litigant is aggrieved, they can approach the court by way of civil writ petition, Article 2 to 6. So there can be a writ of mandamus or certiorari questioning that order, which are being daily entertained by the high courts in India.
So next question is from Mr. L.S. Sandhu.
Yes.
His question is, when a liar refers to a judgment of Honorable Apex Court or High Court to the lower court, and
Yes.
lower court does not mention the judgment or appreciate the judgment, then whether writ petition can be filed against the order?
No. That issue can be taken up while you are filing an appeal or you are filing a second regular appeal. That is called RSA. So that issue can be taken, but generally when we give sometime we prefer written arguments. We attach those documents, those judgments. That judgments become part of that file if the written arguments along with those judgments are taken on record by the said court.
So next question is Mr. Sunil Bhutani. What are the practical benefits for a common man for placing writ in case if police does not register a FIR since last 1 year approximately in case of forgery and cheating?
Honestly speaking, the this high courts and the apex court have drawn a specific conclusion that if the redressal is not made by the police authorities, the concerned police, then immediately the criminal complaint can be filed before the concerned magistrate rather than approaching the high court. Even there are some writ petitions are being filed under 482 in the high court for the redressal, and simply the court directs the concerned SP as far as Haryana is concerned, or the SSP as far as Punjab is concerned, to decide the representation. So the best way out is, the best method as far as our law is concerned, they should approach by way of a criminal complaint before the concerned magistrate. The magistrate having the jurisdiction to entertain that complaint, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all with your today's question answer session. Now I invite Mr. Padamkant Dwivedi for further proceedings, please.
Wonderful. That will be great.
Thank you, Mr. Umeshji. Today, Adhivakta Parishad Punjab has completed its 8th lecture in the series devoted to late Honorable Mr. Justice Shri D.V. Sehgal ji. It is a proud privilege that Honorable Mr. Justice Harnaresh Singh Gill ji accepted our invite and agreed to speak on the topic of writ jurisdiction. His Lordship very elaborately explained the contours of writ jurisdiction in very simple terms, which is going to be very beneficial for the audience today. I would like to extend my vote of thanks to Honorable Mr. Justice Harnaresh Singh Gill ji for guiding us all today and explaining the scope and ambit of Article 32 as well as Article 226 of the Constitution of India, and answering all the questions posed to him in today's webinar. I would like to extend my warm vote of thanks to Honorable Mr. Justice Suvir Sehgal ji and Shri Baldev Raj Mahajan ji, Senior Advocate and Learned Advocate General Haryana, for continuously supporting us and ushering us in the quest of justice. Today we have completed, as I said, 8th lecture of this series.
Great.
I would also like to thank all the participants who spared time and participated in today's webinar, either on Zoom, YouTube, or Facebook. In the end, I would also like to thank the organizing team of Adhivakta Parishad Punjab and the technical team which made today's webinar a success. And then I extend my thanks to Honorable Mr. Justice Gill, who guided us all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
With this, we end today's session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.